Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is nehandaeducateme, and this is my segment. You are already looking at the thumbnail, so you already know that we're here to discuss vetting your therapist. I hope I can get through this in 8 minutes. I'm just going to take the first minute to talk, or the minute and a half to talk about my experiences laying on the couch. And then we're going to get into some of the questions that I think that you should be asking before or when you are looking for a good therapist. Now, I got lucky. The first person that I started talking to was a person that was in a circle of people that I knew, and it was very positive. However, that person was a man. And so I found myself not able to clearly indicate some of the issues that I was having related to some past childhood traumas. And I didn't feel comfortable discussing it with this man, of course, but it was very useful for me. And it was very insightful for my future development. And it just helped me to understand a lot more about some of the issues that I think everyone needs to uncover in their lives by talking to someone who is non objective, neutral about some of the things that some of the things that hold us back and what to do about them. Um, the second person that I ended up going to and why was because my situation had changed. I had, like people all do change, I had then become married and had a second child in my 30s, and that came with it a level of insecurity and um, I guess you could say personal issues that started to bubble up from the situation of not having a clear goal as to what it is I wanted to accomplish within my marriage. So I decided to go back into therapy because, of course, my children started getting older, and those things, with that came along some other issues that I did not know had existed all the time. So we started talking and looking around for a therapist. My husband was the one who did most of the negotiation process. And one of the things that there are two sections that we looked at. We looked at the fees and the technique. All right. And so this video is going to be divided up into those two sections, fees and the questions around fees and cancellation and usage and information. All right. So questions like, will I be charged for consultation fee? So when you're vetting a therapist, sometimes when you go in, you will be asked, you get to talk to your therapist for the first time, telling them I can't sleep or whatever the situation is, and then they will start to um listen to you and start to make arrangements for a further consultation, if that. And if you have to pay for the initial meet, then that's something that you want to clarify up. of course, you want to know what is expected to be paid. Um, Offering of a sliding scale, I don't know much about that. You can ask Uncle Google if you like. Do you or would you fill out a network claim for your clients? So I think that I don't know about here, but there are different types of therapy that you can sign up for that are free, that are like if you're in a crisis situation or if you're like in an Alcoholics Anonymous. I think you can also have your insurance cover part of it depending on what it is that you are going through, where you work, and what your insurance company offers. So that's definitely something that you want to look at on the technical side. Now, do you have policy about calls between sessions? I did not even think about that because, of course, some of the things that I was in therapy for, there were definitely times where I needed my therapist on call. I didn't use that as much as I may have wanted to. Um, and I think that that's a good thing, and I think we could talk about that separately, but that is definitely something that you should look into is will you be able to, depending on, of course, your issues, refer back to this video, depending on some of the issues that you have and how serious the degree of that issue is, you might want to make sure that if you decide, when you decide on a therapist, that that therapist is available to you on call as well as just in session. So you also want to know what the policy about cancellation is. Like I said, I did not pay directly for my therapy, so cancellation was a little bit stricter. They expect you to show up because If you don't, then they can give it the session, the slot, that slot to somebody else. And so that is very, very important to know how often you want to be meeting, and do you offer discounts for for patients who either pay in cash or pay through insurance. These things are also very, very important because, of course, one of the biggest hangups that people have is their commitment to the change process and all of those intricate details that surround those, especially having to deal with things like money and rejection. And I could get into why those questions are important in another video, but I hope and will trust that you can use your discretion and why those questions are important. Now let's get into the theory and technique and approach. What is your theoretical orientation? Um, I just recently learned about this because I am very interested in neurology and psychology. And of course, in that circle, you have people like the Freudians, and then you have the Youngs, those kinds. It's almost feeling a little bit political, but my second therapist and I did not necessarily talk about that as much as me and my first therapist had talked about it. I don't think we even had to, me and my first therapist, because it was in a setting and in a group that it was obvious that his position was clear because yeah. I don't want to get too much into the details, so I don't want to give anybody away here. So, what is your theory of how therapeutic changes occur? What do you think would be the biggest benefit I would get from psychotherapy? Do you consider yourself to be more active or reticent therapist? How come? Now, that question is important for people who really need a lot of listening, who really need a lot of basic, tangible techniques to help them. I think that that is something that's super important to know going in so that it is something that is jiving with you. Ultimately, yes, your therapist will help you to uncover things about yourself that you were not aware of, but self-awareness in going into therapy is extremely important so that you know a little bit about what may or may not work for you. Don't be resistant though. What do you see my main issue is, and how do you think we should address it? Do you recommend medication? This is also very important. If you're a person who is against medication, this is something that you need to know right off the bat. If your therapist is pro medication, psychiatric consultation, um, and who, yeah. Do you recommend medication, psychiatric consultation for your clients who experience similar problems? Are there other ways to treating my problem, and what do you think the advantage is of going through the route as you're suggesting? Do you feel my issues are something that you could address in the short term or long term treatment? That is huge because I wasn't clear about that going in. Like, how long do I have to be doing this? And for some people, it can happen that you get comfortable. Therapy becomes a part of your life, and it is not designed for that. I know a lot of people are, this may be controversial, but it's not designed for you to be in therapy your whole life. Of course, some of us may be experiencing extremely difficult situations where we may need long-term therapy, but the end goal is to be able to deal with at least a minimum, um, at least as much as is possible at any point in time in your life so that you could live a healthy and prosperous life, right? Do you feel that which issues do you think could be addressed in the short term and which issues require long-term treatment? I already talked about that one. What books, articles do you suggest? I did this as well. So there were some books that I recommended that I think I spoke on my Facebook channel that were very helpful that were recommended in therapy sessions. And I think that it was something that was very useful for me and it's a routine that actually it's a route that actually works. Do you think my issue is more situation dependent, acute, or personality based, chronic? Now, this is also a very political question. In my opinion, there are also therapists who feel like if you've always been a certain way, you are never going to change that thing about you, and it is going to remain like that. Depending on what your issue are, that might sound very discouraging, and it also can be a little bit counterproductive to the whole point of therapy, right? I've heard people's therapists tell them that, like I've heard people quote their therapist and say, "Oh, my therapist says that I'm like this and I'm never going to change." As a life coach, that to me is a very negative statement. I feel like the human brain is plastic and the human experience is so dynamic that we all have the ability to make drastic change and never be that same person um, ever if we make a clear-cut decision to not do that thing. But some therapists are not with that. Like I said, some therapists actually believe that you are this person and you have to work to not be that person for the rest of your life, or be at least have a sense of awareness of, okay, I can manage this kind of behavior. Now, I think I could actually do a video on that by itself, but maybe I already have. Comment if you are here. If you're one of my regulars, comment if you've seen anything like that on my channel, because I feel like I talk about that a lot. But I am I'm very, very keen on always asking this kind of question, no matter if it's a therapist or a coach or anybody, because I think that I know that that can be a very sore point based on what is possible for a person to do as they try to change the things about themselves that they don't like. And if your therapist feels like you're this person and you're only here to talk about manage your issues, then that might come across as I will be in therapy for a longer period of time than I need to, and that is money making. In my opinion, is a little bit of money making scheme, because then the longer you're in therapy, the more money they can get out of you. And that might just be conspiracy theory or just the way I feel, but don't take my advice. I am um not a therapist, and I don't know your situation or how acute or chronic you are. But if you don't want to be in therapy for an extended amount of time, it is good to get always a second opinion about uh, what other alternative issues, what other alternative methodologies you can use. Do you consult with anyone regularly on on your cases? And might you be speaking about another person about my case? You know, a lot of therapists, they write books, they give lectures, they give talks, they do group workshop sessions, and of course, all of those sessions are, all of those, a lot of that information that they share is out of their direct practice. So you might find yourself being an anonymous Joe in their studies, and that might have some privacy implications for you. So that is something that you would want to know right off the bat. I am pretty much an open book, so I didn't even bother to even think about that. Maybe I should have. I don't know. But if you are somebody who's private or high level, or just don't want your business in the street, then you need to make sure that you ask that question. I think that that is one of the biggest things, the biggest concerns that I have, even in coaching, about people's wanting to share people's willingness to share their experiences with you, and then you have that share with them uh in a third party scenario. And so please make sure that you are asking these questions, that you are vetting your therapist properly before you sit in that chair. You don't want to go into the situation and then come out worse than you were, which has also happened to me. But please like and subscribe to my channel. Make sure that you comment down below if you like this content. It really would do me a great solid, and make sure that people can find my channel and find more content like this. I hope to see you guys in the next one, and have great days. And if you can, stay safe and stay free.